Hello everyone, my name is Victor. I am the Occult Technician, and this is Mind War, Season 3, Episode 5. Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. Join the Mind War today. Enlist at patreon.com/mindwar. Now back to the show. Welcome back to Mind War, folks. I appreciate you being here. We have a lot to cover today, so let's get started. So, folks, we're going to pick up where we left off in the book Journeys Out of the Body by Dr. Robert Monroe. We are on Chapter 7, which is titled Post-Mortem. So this chapter, again, Dr. Monroe is exploring several different attempts where he is visiting his friends, right, through astral travel. So again, these are his stories. I'm going to read a few excerpts throughout this chapter, but these are really his stories. So please go ahead and read through them on your own. And the important things that you're going to want to take away from them is basically how he categorizes his journeys and his experiences. That's a good way to look at it, you know. What type of things is he making note of? That way, as you're having your experiences, you can do the same. Because again, taking notes is very important, right? So in Chapter 7, Post-Mortem, we'll start with the author here, Dr. Monroe says, any acknowledgement of the existence of the second body immediately demands the question mankind has pondered since the day he learned to think. Do we live on? Is there life beyond the grave? Our religions say believe and have faith. This is not quite enough for the syllogistic thinker who seeks valid premises that are clear-cut, leading to an inescapable conclusion. All I can do is be as reportorial and objective as one can be in a basically subjective experience. Okay, so again, one of the things that we're exploring here is there life after death? What comes next? What does it mean to live outside of our physical body, our spirit, our second body? What does it mean? He talks here about religions and how, again, we've talked about this a little bit before, where in religion, we hear a lot about the afterlife and heaven and our spirit going to heaven and things like that. But if you try to talk about these things with a religious person, they're probably going to say that it is blasphemy and that it's something evil that you're not supposed to even think about, consider, or, dare attempt like we are doing here. So the most important thing that we can do as we are sharing our experiences is to be reportorial. So just report subjectively and objectively what we have found. Okay, because this really is a subjective experience. No two experiences are going to be exactly alike. And again, we're trying to explain things that are very dreamlike. So let's see, I took a few notes here. So let's see. First, you have to accept the possibility, remote as it may be to your experience, that you can act, think, and exist without the restriction of a physical body. So Dr. Monroe is talking to one of his friends, or actually he wrote a letter to one of his friends, another doctor, who this gentleman was very sick. He was in the late stages of cancer. He was bedridden. He was with his wife at the hospital, and he actually wasn't seeing anybody. So Dr. Monroe kind of wrote these letters for him to read in his final days, right? And again, Dr. Monroe said to his friend here, the first thing that you have to accept is the possibility. And that's all we're asking here. We have to be open to the possibility, remote as it may be to your experience. All we've ever experienced in our lives is through the 5 physical senses of our physical body. Okay? So, again, we have to have some faith in ourselves as we do this. Faith in the fact that these experiences are going to happen because, again, outside of our physical senses, we've never had these type of experiences before. And he says that we can act, think, and exist without the restriction of a physical body. We can act, think, and exist. We exist outside of our physical body. With that existence, we can think, which is the first and most important thing, and then we can act. We can actually do things outside of our physical body and our second body. The restriction of our physical body, that's very interesting. And I really started to understand that fairly deeply this week. The restrictions of the physical body, some kind of, I guess, clarity was given to me about this idea that we are very limited in our physical body. I started to kind of think of my physical body of, oh, wait a minute, it is fairly limited. I'm very appreciative. It is definitely my temple, and I'm trying to keep it as healthy as I possibly can, but there are a lot of restrictions to it. Okay, so here Dr. Monroe is sharing with his friend something that I've talked to you quite a bit about. If you are experiencing physical pain and you take the pain medication, you try to sleep, all those type of things, and it's just not helping, the Gateway Experience tapes, when you actually have that out-of-body experience, again, it may be one of the first times that you've been able to think clearly without the debilitating reminder and distraction of your physical pain. And so Dr. Monroe says it may be one way to ease physical pain, right? He's telling his friend who is dying of cancer, this might be able to help you with your physical pain. With all the sincerity I can muster, I urge you to think about it. You will have passed a major milestone when you do no more than accept the idea that this second non-physical body of yours actually might exist. Once this has been achieved, your only other barrier is fear. Again, we've addressed fear. We've talked about fear. In the last episode, in tape 1-4, we addressed some of the fears that we're dealing with that were that we put into our energy conversion box, right? But the fear of actually doing these tapes and the type of things that we might experience, again, you don't have to fear them. I promise you. And need not be, because this is like being afraid of your shadow, being afraid of yourself. It is natural rather than strange. It's very true. I think in some ways, our physical body is less natural than our spiritual body. Get used to this idea that the lack of consciousness or that the lack of conscious experience with it does not necessarily mean it is something to be afraid of. Unknowns are feared only as long as they remain so. If you can hang on to this, you need not have fear. Then, and only then, try the formula I have written here. I don't know the effect of any medication you may be taking. It may help or hinder the technique. But do give it a try. It may or may not work the first time. And most importantly, let me know how you get along with it. Okay. So an important piece there, he says the medication that his friend who is again dying of cancer, the medication that he's on may be restrictive and it may not actually allow him to have the experiences that come with the Gateway experience, right? And I read that last sentence because, again, one of the most important things is as we're having these experiences, as we're going through the tapes, write them down. You need to share them. Even if you're not willing to share them publicly yet, as you go through it, make sure you're taking your own notes so that someday you can, in whatever format that you're willing to share it. So his friend dropped into a coma several weeks later. He died peacefully without regaining consciousness. For several months, I thought about an attempt to go and see him. He was the first person close to me who had died since the development of this wild talent. I was both serious and objective. It was the first such opportunity. I was sure that the doctor wouldn't mind if he did continue to exist. Not knowing about such things, I decided he probably needed some rest before I interfered with whatever he was doing. Also, I needed to summon up some additional courage on my own. This was an experiment I hadn't tried before. It might be truly dangerous. Then, on a Saturday afternoon, I made the attempt. It took about an hour to get into the vibrational state, and I finally swung up out of the body, mentally yelling, "I want to see Dr. Gordon." Okay. So again, like we learned in the last episode, we have different locales. The locale that we're working in right now in these very early stages, I like to call the sleep locale. We haven't left our body yet. There's been no astral travel, anything like that. But we are working on things in this kind of darkness, this sleep dojo, right? And this is where we, in the last episode, where we visualized our energy conversion box there in front of us, and we opened the lid and we took out our issues and our concerns and our fears and addressed them, right? Again, that's the sleep dojo. That's where we're learning these tactics and these skills that we need before we go on to advanced techniques. Next is locale 1, where you finally, your spirit body, your second body, leaves your physical body, and now you are exploring the here and now, reality, the real world that we're living in real time. You're able to visit locations on the earth today at this very moment, right? That's locale 2, or locale 1, sorry. Locale 2 is now that dream state. Now we've gone into a place where our imagination kind of controls things the same way that it does in your dream. Once you recognize that you're in a dream, you understand that you have the ability to control it. And that's what happens in locale 2. And then locale 3 is the abyss. It's that space far beyond our universe. Again, if you get in a rocket ship and head in one direction as fast and as far as you can, eventually you are going to leave our universe. You'll see it in the back mirror, and now you'll be floating in darkness and nothingness. That's our true existence. That's where we came from. That's where we're going to return to. And we can do that. We can visit locale 3 as we get into advanced astral travel. And my belief is that there, in locale 3, we can then open windows and open portals to visit wherever we want. We can open a window or a portal back to locale 2, this imaginary dreamlike world where we can visit anything and do anything. Or we can open the window, open the portal, and we can visit back to locale 1, an actual location here on Earth, the here and now, right? So those are the different locales. The reason I read this last one, he says, at the very end, he says, he's floating in darkness, basically, and he's yelling that he wants to see his friend. Now, folks, early on in my studies and early on in my spiritual practice, they were combined the same. And you can see these videos in some of my early work titled My Magical Year on YouTube. I talk about how there was a friend of mine, my childhood friend, who I hadn't seen or heard from in over a decade. I wanted to see him. And so when I was in the darkness, in the abyss, I screamed out for him. I yelled out for him. And something very amazing happened. We're going to talk about that in future episodes of Mind War. Or if you want to spoil it, again, you can go find my playlist, My Magical Year. So let's see what else we got from this chapter, if anything. Okay, let's see. I asked him now how he was feeling. Much better now. The pain is gone. Okay, so this Dr. Monroe is now talking about when his father passed away. And he went to visit his father. He said that basically he went into a room, saw his father there looking out the window. His father was younger looking, more vibrant, happy, cheerful to see him. And as soon as Dr. Monroe asked how you're feeling, and he said, better, the pain is gone, Dr. Monroe said that's when his father kind of disconnected, looked back out the window, and actually started to age in front of him, right? And he's saying that basically just reminding his father about the pain that he was in shrunk and aged his spiritual body, right? So he was probably having a lot of memories about the pain that he was suffering in. And he says at the end of his life, was it that way? Was the pain so intense in those last days when he couldn't make himself understood, because Dr. Monroe's father just couldn't speak at the end, to get help to ease the pain? He couldn't even ask and tell people how much pain he was really in. If this is true, what a terrible prison his body must have been. Death was indeed a blessing. So again, life and death, what comes after life, these are topics that we're going to be discussing. This is the theme through this. It's interesting. It's scary. There are times where it's very heartfelt and sad, and it may be difficult for you to address these things depending on what's going on with the people in your life or maybe your own life, right? But these are important questions. This is why we do the work. Okay. So that was chapter 7, post-mortem. Now we're going to look into chapter 8. The title is "'Cause the Bible Tells Me So." Okay, so again, we're getting into these kind of biblical ideas. This is very important. Again, we're going to address this as we go through the seasons here, through the Gateway Experience seasons, and as we move into the spiritual seasons. Right? In future seasons of Mind War, we're definitely going to get more into religion, and we're going to address it more, and to spirituality of whatever type, whatever flavor you're wanting to practice, how they interact and how they commingle with the Gateway Experience. For those of you who are tired of saying you've never experienced religion, well, you're going to. Stay tuned. Chapter 8, "'Cause the Bible tells me so." If the human being has a second body, if that second body survives what we call death, if personality and character continue to exist in a new, old form, what then? Again, an age-old question that pleads to be answered. To date, in 12 years of non-physical activities, I find no evidence to substantiate the biblical notions of God and afterlife in a place called heaven. So folks, I've only been at this for, I guess, 3, almost 4 years now. Dr. Monroe had done it for 12 years at this point, at the time he wrote this book. And again, he was writing this long before the Gateway Experience ever, the tapes were ever created, before the Monroe Institute was ever built, right? And he's saying that in his 12 years of study and practice in his non-physical travels, he has never found evidence to substantiate the biblical notions of God and the afterlife in a place called heaven. Perhaps I found this and simply haven't recognized it. It is quite possible it may be that I'm not qualified. On the other hand, much of what I have encountered could be some basics which have been distorted through hundreds of years. Let's start with prayer, which is supposed to be a direct communication with God. As we are taught to pray today, it is as if a chemical formula is recited without any knowledge of the original intent or meaning of the ingredients. Again, if you are a religious person, you're going to church every day, and they're telling you, open up your Bible and read the words. You're going to do it formulaic. You're just going to chant the way we chant or sing the way we sing, and you don't actually break down the words and digest them and understand them for what they truly are. It's very, it's calorie dense. It's empty calories. There's nothing to it. There's nothing deep right? You're just going through the motions, and that's not what we're trying to do here, okay? We're trying to learn things. We're trying to understand things on a deeper level. And he describes this about how the children's song London Bridge is Falling Down has a very deep, dark, actual meaning to the lyrics of the song. But as kids, we ran around and sang it with a smile on our face. With no knowledge of the original meaning of the song, our entire civilization is filled with such irrational habits. Evidently, prayer is one of these. Folks, this is something that I woke up to years ago. The idea that here in the West, especially in America, we have all sorts of just convoluted and smushed together, religious holidays. Think of Easter. You start with the word Easter, which comes from, I believe, Ishtar, some goddess of the past that was the goddess of fertility, who is represented by rabbits and eggs. None of that makes sense. None of it has anything to do with the biblical story of Jesus Christ, right? And in his resurrection on Easter. How did we get into this area? Same thing with Christmas. We have a guy named Santa who comes through the chimney with reindeer that fly because supposedly they all ate magic mushrooms or something like that, right? And now they're flying around and they're giving presents to everybody, and none of that has anything to do with the biblical story of, again, Jesus Christ being born, right? So again, in the West, we squish together all these, strange stories from history, and irrationally, we just believe, oh, this is what it's supposed to be. None of that makes sense, and that's what we're doing. We're tearing down those old thought processes. And it's not just old ways of thinking when it comes to finances or technology or how to run the world or how to run the country and things like that, food and all that. We're breaking down some of these silly things that have just gone on and saying, listen, this just isn't working for us anymore, right? And that's part of what we're doing. Somewhere, someone knew how to pray. He tried to teach others. A few learned the methodology. Others absorbed only the words, and the words themselves became altered and changed over the years. Gradually, the technique was lost until accidentally rediscovered periodically through the ages. In the later cases, only rarely has the rediscovered been able to convince others that the old established way is not quite right. That's what we're doing here, folks. Okay? That's what we are doing. We have uncovered through the Gateway Experience tapes, and especially when you combine them with your spiritual practices and spiritual sacraments, which we're going to talk deeper about in future episodes, right? We have uncovered something here very important, okay? And it's very difficult for us, these people who have rediscovered these things, to try to convince others that the old established way is not quite right. So what is the old established ways as of right now? Well, that is the church establishment, the way that you know it today, where you're supposed to go on Sunday, and that's basically it. There really isn't much else to it. There's a few rules, whether you want to believe them or not, it doesn't matter. Otherwise, you're just going to be part of the world. You're going to enjoy sports and entertainment and, alcohol and all those other things that everyone else in the world does, right? So we're trying to say, hey, that's just it's not right. This isn't how this works, okay? And one of the things that we need to be careful of, and what he's talking about here, is how, people over time have been taught to pray over and over and over again through the generations. But it doesn't work for a lot of people until some of them discover or rediscover how to make prayer actually work. This is a perfect example for the Gateway Experience. We could have 1,000 people, join our first Earth Battalion. And we teach all 1,000 people how the Gateway Experience tapes works, right? But maybe only half, maybe less than half, actually have the experiences. Maybe most of them are just listening to the tapes. They're only hearing the tapes. And they say, oh yeah, that was very relaxing and it was nice. And I was able to, kind of get some rest. And it felt good to kind of just be in this very, de-stress and relaxed state. That was cool and everything, but they never actually experience the tapes. They never actually have an out-of-body experience, okay? And you're going to know. You're going to know when you have it. You're going to know when things start to change, all right? And they actually start changing with today's episode, and we're going to talk about that in the second half. So here is an illustration on one non-physical excursion. I was speeding through nothing back to the physical with everything apparently well under control. Without warning, I rammed into a solid wall of all impenetrable material. I wasn't hurt, but I was utterly shocked. The material was hard and solid and seemed to be made of huge plates of steel overlapping slightly and welded together. Each had a slight curvature, as if part of a globe. I tried to push through it, but could not. I went up, down, to the right, and left. I was absolutely sure my physical body lay beyond this barrier. Okay. The only reason that I bring this up, and I'm going to try to find the notes for when I actually had this experience, but at one point, I ran into this barrier. I know the barrier he's talking about. I didn't gather much information. I wasn't able to explore it. I don't have answers for you what it was, but I'll tell you what it felt like. Again, just like he described, plates of steel welded together. In my opinion, it almost looked riveted together, but either way, kind of attached. He makes them sound like that they were hard, right? And that, it was a surface. For me, it was fluid, right? I couldn't penetrate through it. It was very strange when I got to it. And again, you can picture, I was floating in the darkness all around. But, just this area kind of opened up to where I saw this barrier. So think of it like, say you're swimming in a pool at night and it's dark in the pool. You're in the water and you're swimming and swimming and swimming, and all of a sudden you swim up to the wall. And you can now kind of see the wall. You can't really exactly see it very well, but you can feel that it's there. You know that it's there. That's kind of what it was. It was very strange. Again, it looked like, welded together steel plates, but for me, mine were fluid. It's like I could push on them like a balloon or something like that. It was very strange. From my memory, I just kind of backed away, went back into my body, carried on with my life. But again, I made note of it. I thought it was very strange. So let's see. So here again, so in chapter 8, Dr. Monroe is again talking more about his experiences in, I believe, Locale 2. Okay. So again, Locale 2 is this dream state. In my opinion, he's going and having these dreams and experiencing them and controlling them. So you're listening and reading someone's dream journal, basically. I don't think the goal here is to take these locales and these, descriptors of where Dr. Monroe's been on his journeys and then try to say, oh, I need to go to that place. That must be Locale 2, the same place that Dr. Monroe went. No, that's not it. Locale 2, again, is that dreamland. It's that dream state, right? So at one point in Locale 2, Dr. Monroe found himself in a place that he felt kind of scared and afraid, right? And so he said, I prayed. I used every prayer I knew because he was trying to return to his physical body. He asked God to help me. I prayed in the name of Jesus Christ for help. I tried a few saints I heard of through my Catholic wife. The result: my tormentors laughed loudly and worked me over enthusiastically. Listen to him pray to his gods, one chuckled. Most contemptuously, listen to him. Okay, so again, at this point, he has come across some type of entities that are, attacking him. Again, this is his dream. This isn't yours. Just because he wrote it doesn't mean that you're going to experience these things. But I think it's very telling that when he did experience these things and he started praying to God, they said, there is no God here. And folks, I promise you, I have not seen any sign of God or Jesus Christ or any of those things in my travels. Again, that's not what we're doing here. There can be a place for that. If you are a Christian and those are the things that you want to find, and those are the things you want to imagine, you're going to find them. You're going to create them. You're going to have experiences with them. For me, that's just not what I've been doing. Okay. So in another chapter here, it says, project this outward, and you can begin to perceive the myriad variations. Your destination in the heaven or hell of Locale 2 seems to be grounded completely within the framework of our deepest, constant, and perhaps non-conscious motivations, emotions, and personality drives. The most consistent and strongest of these acting as your homing device when you enter this realm. So again, Locale 2, he's describing what it means to have a dream. When you're in a dream state, your mind is focused on your deepest motivations, emotions, and personality drives. You're often doing things in your dreams that you're not allowed to do in real life, that you haven't accomplished yet in real life, that you wish you could, that you desire to be able to do, right? And he's saying that that's kind of what builds Locale 2, is some of your deeper, desires, subconscious or not, right? So, and then those become like a homing device when you enter this realm. So again, those things are going to be what build the world around you in Locale 2. The reason that we're talking about it right now is because we want to be conscious of it when we visit Locale 2. If we want to go in with a purpose, right? Dr. Monroe is going to talk about that quite a bit in upcoming tapes. What is the purpose of you coming here? What is the purpose of you listening to this tape today? Why? Right? And if you go in and we're listening to a tape, like future tapes where he talks about exploring and using your imagination, you can go in with predetermined and preset places that you want to visit and think about. Okay, so now he's talking, I believe, kind of like Locale 3, what it means to be there. He says, to me, it was a place or condition of pure peace, yet exquisite emotion. Okay. In my mind, this is Locale 3. We've left the universe. We're floating in the darkness. I've described it to you before. It's warm, peaceful, tranquil. There is no pain. There is no worry. There is an overwhelming feeling of love, an overwhelming feeling of, oh, this is where I came from. This is where I belong. The physical body, it's down there with all of its aches and pains and all the worries of, I got to go to work so I can eat food and stay in my house and all those things, right? All of those disappear. They're not in Locale 3. It was as if you were floating in warm, soft clouds. There is no up or down, where nothing exists as a separate piece of matter. The warmth is not merely around you, it is of you and through you. Your perception is dazzled and overwhelmed by the perfect environment. And he capitalizes the word perfect environment. Locale 3, the perfect environment. That's a great way to explain it. It's a great title for it. It is amazing. It is perfect. It feels wonderful. It's pain-free. It's worry-free. It's an amazing place to be, again, to de-stress, to experience thought without pain and worry, right? So let's see. Each of the 3 times I went there, I did not return voluntarily. I came back sadly, reluctantly. Someone helped me return. Each time as I returned, I suffered intense nostalgia and loneliness for days. I felt as an alien might among strangers in a land where things were not right, where everything and everyone was so different and so wrong when compared to with where you belonged. Acute loneliness, nostalgia, and something akin to homesickness. So great was it that I had not tried to go there again. He's talking about something that you may experience, because I know I have. When you come out of this state of being, when you leave locale 3, there is a bit of nostalgia for it. You miss it. You want to go back to it. Almost a frustration, a sadness. I know that when those tapes are coming to an end, I almost every time I'm just saying, no, come on, Doc, just give me 5 more minutes, man. Just give me a few more minutes here to enjoy the warmth, the pain-free, just experiencing and acknowledging life outside of the body. Let me just experience it for a few more minutes. I understand what he's talking about, right? That's how beautiful that feeling is, okay? So, folks, that was chapter 8. Because the Bible tells me so. We went through chapter 7 titled Post-Mortem, right? Again, we're working through the books, Journeys Out of the Body. And I'm telling you, when we return, okay, we're going to go through Wave 1 Discovery, Tape 5, titled Explore Sleep. Okay, and I have some interesting stories to tell you after a word from our sponsor. Mind War is sponsored by Victory Work Apparel. Use promo code Mind War. All right, welcome back, folks. So now we are going to do a deep dive into Wave 1 Discovery, Tape 5, Explore Sleep. Okay, so to recap, Tape 1, Orientation. Basically, Dr. Monroe is welcoming us to the Gateway experience. He's explaining to us a few ideas like our preparatory process, that all the steps that we're going to take at the beginning of each tape to get us ready to go into our journey. In tape 2, we looked at focus 3, that very first level of hypnosis. In tape 3, we went to focus 10, a deeper level of hypnosis. We learned how to create our a resonant energy balloon, right? And then in tape 4, we dealt with our fears, our concerns, and our issues, all of those that we put inside of our energy conversion box. Again, that's that very first step of our preparatory process, right? Now, one thing, when you look at wave 4 or tape 4 and all the tapes prior, one of the things that Dr. Monroe is doing is really focusing on getting us into that deep sleep, right? That deep, relaxed state. And when he does, as he's counting down, you feel yourself almost sinking inwards, right? Deeper and deeper into sleep. He's using words like deeper, and it almost forces you downwards. You're looking into yourself. You're falling, right? We're using words like falling and deeper into relaxation, okay? When you're working through your energy conversion box, you're focusing on it as if it's right there in front of you, right? You know, and you're looking downwards, right? Well, with tape 5, Dr. Monroe starts to use a different technique here. And he starts to use sounds and instructions that now make us look outward. And it creates some very interesting experiences and some phenomenon, right? So let me start here, though. So I listened to tape 5 yesterday 3 separate times, okay? So the first time I listened to it in the afternoon. It was time for my afternoon nap. I worked hard all morning, and I was like, I'm going to take a quick nap. I sat down on the recliner, right? I got my blanket, Leo, my little Boston Terrier. He came, laid on my lap. I put my eye covers on. I put these headphones on, and I started listening to the tape. Everything was going okay. And as things started to really ramp up and started to get exciting, I could tell that we were kind of at the beginning of this roller coaster. I was like, oh, this is going to be an interesting tape. I remember this tape, but it's been such a long time since I listened to it. And I was like, oh, this is exciting. This is going somewhere. And all of a sudden, about 15, 20 minutes into the tape, and this one is a little longer, it's almost 40 minutes long, all of a sudden my headphones cut out, right? It just stopped. Dead silent. Now, this is kind of weird because I live on a very busy road. There's a lot of, continuous traffic that goes in front of my house. Kind of not the fastest traffic, right? But there's a steady stream of cars going back and forth. And so I always hear the cars, coming and going as I'm going throughout my day. And especially yesterday, I had the windows wide open. It was a nice day. And I remember when the headphones went out, I was like, wait a minute, is this part of the tape? What is going on? And I heard complete silence. So at first I thought, oh, the power must have went out, and that's why the tape went off or something like that. But then I realized, wait a minute, I'm not using Wi-Fi for the tape. I have them downloaded to my phone. So what happened here? The power going out wouldn't have affected my headphones. They're charged up and using Bluetooth on my phone. And so I just thought, okay, that's really weird. And it took me a second to kind of realize, because I didn't hear any cars going by either. And I was like, okay, this is weird. Almost had kind of a horror movie feel to it when somebody wakes up from a dream and no one's around. I was like, what is going on here? So that disturbance took me completely out of the tape. Okay. And that was early in the afternoon. I said, I just can't do that. It's not going to work. I'm not going to try again. So I just put everything down and went about the rest of my day. So in the evening, I said, okay, I'm going to prepare again. I'm going to try again tonight. Right. So I got prepared this time. I laid in bed, got the bed made. Everything was ready. I got into, what I sleep in, just shorts and a t-shirt, no socks on or anything, just like I normally would when I was going to bed. The house was starting to cool down, but I had all my nice warm blankets on. I thought, hey, this is going to be great. Again, about halfway through the tape, all of a sudden, one of my legs started to have kind of an involuntary muscle spasm. And I started to realize, oh, my feet are kind of, cold and clammy almost, right? Now, overall, I didn't really feel very cold, but I think it was just cold enough to where my legs kind of started shaking. And with the intensity of the tapes, it just took me right out of it, right? While I was laying there, I tried to stretch my leg a little bit. But here's the problem. When you're trying to get deep into the tapes and you're trying to really experience them, if you have physical things going on, it's going to take you right out of it, right? When you're trying to float outside of your body and all of a sudden your legs start shaking, it just is like an anchor. It just sucks you right back in. And, on top of the leg shaking thing, my throat was a little scratchy because yesterday I was doing some woodworking. So I'm sure I was breathing in some wood dust. And to be honest, I added some enhancements to the tape, and we'll talk about that in future episodes. And I think those were a little intense at this moment, right? So again, that was my second try. It didn't work. I just had to shut the tape off, right? And say, okay, that's it. I got up for about 5 minutes. I just double checked things. I grabbed a nice pair of socks, right? Because I knew that would keep my feet warm. Everything else was basically the same. But I said, I'm trying again, right? And so this time when I laid down, I really kept my legs close together, my feet close together with my socks on. I tucked my arms in straight, kind of at the sides, So my hands would stay really warm. I tuck the blankets in nice and tight, almost like an Egyptian mummy, right? I was wrapped right in there. And that heat allowed me to continue all the way through the tapes and have some amazing experiences. And we'll get into that here. So Dr. Monroe in tape 5, so wave 1, tape 5, explores sleep. He says, this is your exercise for your exploration of sleep. You should be laying down and comfortable, hearing my voice in your right ear. Begin your preparation process. First, utilize your energy conversion box. Second, your resonant tuning. Third, build your energy or resonant energy balloon. And fourth, state your affirmation beginning with I am more than my physical body. And fifth, move on to focus 10 and I will join you there. So he gives you a few minutes to go through the process. Again, we've learned these techniques. If you're having trouble with them, you need to go back and listen to those tapes over and over again. This isn't something that you're just going to get right away. That's not how this works. It takes practice. So don't feel bad. If you listen to the tape and you're almost listening to it the same way you would listen to a podcast or something and nothing really happens, there is no real experience, you're kind of just hearing the words, that's fine. Try again. Try again. Make a few changes like I did. I had to put some warm socks on, make sure I was more comfortable, right? Make a few changes, okay? But try again. He says, now in focus 10, you will experience and remember the process you used during the total sleep state. So what he's talking about here, because we're exploring sleep, he is telling you every night you fall asleep and you have some method of falling asleep. I want you, and Dr. Monroe says, I want you to remember how you fall asleep. This is a big twist, a big change in the tapes. No longer is he telling us exactly step by step what to do, but instead he's saying, listen, you fall asleep every night in your own body. You tell me what steps you do to do that. How do you fall asleep every night? And sometimes, and what you're going to learn here is it's not even conscious things. It's kind of a subconscious process. And he brings it out of us. And so now we can look at it clearly, look at it more consciously. Oh, how do we actually fall asleep? He says, relax now and follow the sound of a vibrational energy, which will help you remember. Okay, now this is what's interesting. Like I said before, a lot of, the prior tapes, when we listen to them, we're sinking deeper and deeper. But now with tape 5, the sound is very interesting. First, you're going to recognize the sound of being on a train. And you're hearing the train tracks underneath you as you go. But they speed up. It's a speeding train. It's getting faster and faster and faster. Along with the sound of a train, you're getting the muffled sound of being in an airplane, right? Just kind of that, right? Just that constant, engine roar. And it sounds like you're in a tunnel almost. It's very muffled the way that he's able to, concoct this sound. It's very amazing. But as you go through and you're listening to this, you realize, oh, it's like speeding up. We're getting faster and faster. We're moving forward. We're moving upward in a way. No longer are we sinking down. No longer are we falling deeper. Now we are working outward. It's very interesting just how a simple sound, how this changes our perception. He says, now that you're relaxed, now think of how nice it would be. How nice it would be to float out in a way. How nice it would be, how pleasant, how calm, and how serene. So now he's telling us it's time to float outwards. Instead of sinking deeper and falling into this deep, relaxed state, Now we're going to float outward. We're going to project our energy outward. And folks, this was the first time that you're going to have a real physical feeling with these tapes. Because what I felt last night was amazing, okay? It was truly amazing, right? And so let's talk a little bit more before I describe exactly what I was feeling here. He says, now that you're floating a little bit, now I want you to turn slowly as if you were a log floating in water. Roll over slowly as if you were a log floating in water. And now detach. Easily detached. Let yourself float up slowly, up and away, calm, pleasant, and serene, floating upward. Now feel and remember how you are, remaining calm and serene. Feel and remember. Okay. So for me, this was the first time I felt my spirit body start to actually be created. Okay. I felt this when I listened to the tapes the first time. You know, I started all of this almost 4 years ago when I really got into the tapes. And starting at that year, I listened to them over and over again, and I had these experiences. Over the last year or two, I haven't been doing them as much. I do them periodically, and that's why we're diving deep back into the tapes through this, through these seasons, right? Because I know that I needed to get back to basics. I wanted to remember these things more clearly than I did the first time, right? And so what I was feeling when he first says it's time to float, all of a sudden, I feel my physical body almost sinking downward, but my spirit body is now starting to grow. It was almost like a sponge when you add water to it. It just gets bigger, right? It just started to get bigger, and I could just feel my physical body there, again, warm, pain-free. And my body was sinking. And here's what's interesting. My physical body felt like it was falling. So you know that feel of falling when you are either having a dream where you're falling or you're on a roller coaster? The same chemicals started to flow through my body. And I started, you know, it's a little frightening at first. You feel like you're falling. My physical body was falling, but my spiritual body was floating upwards, right? Again, no detachment. I guess a good way to explain it is maybe like a popcorn kernel, right? The kernel is your physical body, this hard little shell. But as you go through this tape, it pops into a piece of popcorn. Your physical shell is still there, but your spirit body has now expanded out of it. It's growing, it's bigger, it's lit up, right? My spirit body felt bigger than my physical body, right? And so now he says, now that you've expanded outside of the limits of your physical body, he said, I want you to roll like a log, okay? And so here's what's interesting. I'm sure all of you out there who are listening, you have slept on your side. You have rolled over in one direction or the other. That's all you're going to do. Your physical body is going to stay straight, right? Your arms are straight, your legs are straight. Your physical body's already asleep. Again, completely asleep. But it's your mental, it's your spiritual body, your consciousness. Now through your consciousness and with your spirit body, you're going to roll over like you're sleeping. We've done it 1,000,000 times. And this is where things really start to change. Because as you do that, now you really start to wiggle out of that physical body, right? Not at any time during listening to this tape did I detach from my body, completely float away. That's not the experience that I had. But it was above my body a little bit. It was expanded outside of it. And so I was able to kind of work my way out of it. Again, you think of any type of bug as it's working its way out of its exoskeleton. That's a lot like what this experience felt like, okay? He says, and again, as you start to float up a little bit, again, no total separation. You're not even 4 or 5 feet above your body. That's later on. Right now, we're still just expanding outside of our body. He says, I want you to remember how this feels, okay? And so that's why I'm trying to use these descriptors. I was very conscious last night thinking, what am I going to tell the folks? You know, I want to be able to explain this the best I can. So I was really trying to think about how this felt. So let's see here. He says, how are you right now? You remain calm and serene. Now float down again, down in the direction from which you came, more and more, more and more. Back into the direction whence you came. Now turn as if you were a log floating in water. Roll as if you were a log floating in water. Now you are almost back where you started. Almost back where you started. Now you have returned completely from where you started. Back to the point where you started. Relax and feel calm and comfortable in focus 10. And remember what you have perceived. So again, the feeling that I had was coming out of the shell. A flower blooming, the petals as they bloom out, that was your spirit body blooming out, right? You feel the lightness of it, the warmth, the pain-free, the strength and energy of your spirit body. It feels almost like plasma. It feels like you could take one arm of your spirit body and grab the other arm of your spirit body, but not in the physical way that this clunky, these hands, our arms, our physical body, not the way that these ones do. It's very different. It's very powerful. It's much bigger than our physical body. And that's what we were feeling, right? We expanded out of it just a little bit, and then we started to work our way by rolling back and forth like a log. And we kind of exited our exoskeleton just a little bit, broke free from that shell, allowed the energy and the creation of our physical or of our spirit body, of our second state body through this process. And now he's saying, come back. So now you kind of float back, you twist your way back into your body, right? And now you're back in focus 10. And it's so amazing. You're going to say, hey, there was a totally different feeling from being in focus 10, which is just that deep, hypnotic, relaxed state, to actually expanding into the spirit body. It's very different, right? And now he says, you are moved now into normal, natural, restful sleep as I count from 11 to 20. When I reach the count of 20, you will be in total and complete normal, natural, restful sleep. I am going to count now. Okay. And so then he starts counting down. But what's interesting as we go through this part of the tape here, the sound of the, of really what sounds like a train going through a tunnel, almost like you're in an airplane or kind of a spaceship. It's muffled sound. But at this point, you're going so fast that the sound kind of disappears. And as that was happening, I was able to, instead of expanding outward, now it was like I was looking down, right? I could feel my spirit body looking downwards. And as I did, it's like it was able to slide right out of my physical body. And now I'm looking down and it feels like I'm looking way down, like my body's very long and curved almost. And it's like I was able to curve myself out of it and lift through my head almost, right? A very amazing feeling. Again, kind of butterflies in the stomach, like you're falling, like, whoa, am I high up here? What's happening, right? And now this is what's interesting, okay? This is part of the kind of revelation I had yesterday, right? So our perception is through, in our awake state, in our physical body with our five senses, our perception is through our eyeballs. That's normally where we perceive it. You can think of that cartoon character Cyclops from the X-Men, right? The guy who shoots the lasers out of his eyes. That's your perception wherever the laser is pointed, okay? Now, one of the issues that we deal with in our physical body and the restrictions and limitations that it places upon us is that our perception is always straightforward. Now, we can look upwards. We can lift our head and look upwards, right? Left and right. We can look around, right? Again, still limited, but we have mobility to be able to look around or move our physical body to look behind us and things like that. Here's such an interesting feeling, and this is what I kind of realized last night, was my physical body is, laying there. I'm basically looking at the ceiling. I'm looking upwards, right? But my perception, I was able to all of a sudden now look upwards. My physical eyes didn't move upwards. My head didn't look upwards. But my spirit body was able to move outside. I still was in my physical body. I could tell that. Again, I hadn't done... I'm still not having an out-of-body experience. I'm still in the physical, but now I realize I'm looking upwards. And when I started to look upwards, again, the sound that you're hearing through this tunnel, it's pulling you upwards almost. And it felt like it was pulling my spiritual body upwards. Felt very, very good, very calming, very peaceful. Almost like a massage where they're pulling you, right? But not with these clunky physical hands. Not, the physical hand can only touch, so many points at one time. This felt like every cell of my spirit body was being pulled simultaneously all at once to lift me up, lift me out of the body, right? Again, there wasn't a full disconnection. It was more like stretching, right? Just stretching upwards, looking upwards. My perception was through the top of my head as I was looking up, because the sound, it focuses you. As we listen to the tapes, you're gonna realize that there'll be sounds of airplanes taking off and landing, right? So an airplane may take off from this direction, right? And you hear it lifting off, but then you hear it landing in your left ear. As Dr. Monroe's talking to you, he might start talking to you in your left ear, and then he says, okay, now we're going to roll to the right. And when he does, his voice moves to your right, and it pulls your spirit body. The direction that your perception is going, it pulls it in a different direction, right? These are all very important tools that we're learning. You have to get these steps down first. This is the stretching exercises, really. That's what we're doing here. We are, I believe, in wave 1, tape 5, you are creating your spirit body for the first time. Your second state, you're coming out of your exoskeleton, but you're not flying around, nothing like that yet. And you're stretching. We're stretching ourselves out, right? After, this is our physical body. This is why as we get old, we shrink, right? And we shrink down, and our back becomes bent over, and all those sad things that happens as the physical body dies away, right? But we are breaking out of that now. That's what we're doing. We're focusing our energy outward for the first time in the tapes. And I'm telling you, folks, it felt amazing. So let's see. Okay, so now Dr. Monroe is going to count from 11 to 20, right? And now at this point, it feels amazing. It's still kind of intense, but now he starts to slow things down. Now he's bringing us back down to earth, right? Now he's 11, 12, 13. Deeper, deeper. We're getting into a deeper, relaxed state. We're falling asleep now, right? And he says this: at any time from this moment on, whenever you desire normal, natural, restful sleep, all you have to do is count slowly in your mind from 1 to 20. When you reach the count of 20, you will be in normal, natural, restful sleep. When you reach the count of 20, you'll be in normal, natural, restful sleep. The more you perform this function of going to normal, natural, restful sleep by counting from 1 to 20, the easier and more effective it will become. Right? I mean, literally counting sheep. Okay? Almost nothing different. This is just another tool that we've added to our arsenal. We have the tools of touching your forehead to remember things, thinking of the number 1 and moving the fingers on your right hand to wake up. We touch or we move our hand and think of 1 because 1 is that wake up. It's time to go. Open your eyes, move your body, right? We move our physical hand in order to distract us from being tired or whatever's going on. We touch our foreheads. That singular touch there is a way to distract us from, oh, we can't remember this thing. We can't find the thing that we're looking for. Now we're angry. But with the physical touch and purposely thinking about the number 10, now we take ourselves out of that anger and we have a clear moment, just a moment of clarity to remember where the thing is that we're looking for. Remember the thought that we were trying to think of, right? These are the type of tools that we're learning. And now this one's very simple. If you want to get to sleep at night, you're literally going to count yourself to sleep 1 to 20. Don't sit there and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's not going to work that way. Just like he does. 1, take a few deep breaths. 2, allow yourself to sink deeper. Walk yourself into sleep. 3, I'm sinking deeper and deeper into sleep. 4, I'm more comfortable and my body is warm and pain-free. Those type of thoughts, right? You're going to be able to walk yourself into sleep now. And the more that we do it, the better it's going to be. Again, if you're one of those folks that have trouble sleeping, this is a great tape to listen to over and over. I think that this is a tape where if you want to have this experience of not only being able to fall asleep, but then, purposely energizing your spirit body, this is a great tape to listen to. And he says, and now that you are deeply asleep, remember how nice it is to float out and away, Now float slowly as if you were a log. Slowly. Now detach easily and let yourself float up and away, slowly up and away, easily, calmly, pleasantly. Okay. So again, he's counted us to 20, so now we're in deep sleep. And then he reminds us afterwards, now it's time to float away. Now it's time to float into locale 2 where we dream. I think that's what he's walking us into here. But I don't want to say the problem is that with this tape, he's getting us asleep so we are not conscious to what comes next. As we fall asleep, we fall into that unconscious state. That's what he's doing here with this tape, right? That's why we don't feel ourselves have an out-of-body experience in astral travel into locale 2 at this point, because we're falling asleep. We're unconscious when it happens. But we have to practice these things because in future tapes, we're going to be conscious as we have the out-of-body experience and float up slowly and easily. And then we travel to those next locales. And that was it. That's it for the tape. Because after he says this, that we're easily, calmly, and pleasantly floating away in a deep sleep, the sound slowly starts to get quieter and quieter until it disappears. And now you're laying there if you are able to fall asleep, you would be asleep at this moment. Deep asleep, totally unconscious. You wouldn't, you would hopefully be able to sleep throughout the rest of the night, right? Personally, I was a little too jazzed, a little too excited, and I was doing this a little bit earlier than my bedtime when I normally fall asleep, so I wasn't able to fall asleep, but I was laying there in the quiet, very calm, and this is why I do this, because I want you to learn from my mistakes. Very important note here, folks. Write this down, try to remember it. Make sure whatever piece of software that you are listening to the Gateway Experience tapes through, whatever it is, if you're watching the tapes on YouTube, if you've downloaded them and have it in your own, media player software on your phone or on your computer, make sure it's set not to automatically play the next freaking tape or song, because that's what happened to me. After the tape, I'm sitting there. I'm so comfortable, so calm. It's silent. I just wanted to kind of just lay there and experience it. I was still very conscious. My body was asleep, but I was still wide awake. I wanted to just enjoy that feeling of just kind of being deeply relaxed and pain-free. And sure enough, within a few seconds, some song came on that I had downloaded, and it just rocked me right away, right? It startled me. I kind of, took the headphones off right away. I was like, damn it, because it felt so good. I didn't want to leave that state of being, right? So again, mistakes were made there, but this is why we do this. This is why it took me 3 times to get through these tapes yesterday, and I still didn't get it perfectly right. But now I know for the next time, I have to double check those settings. And again, I thought I had changed it. I thought I did it right, but of course, but I had made some mistake there. So, again, a very interesting tape, folks. This is a great one. I think it's one that you can revisit multiple times. And again, some of the enhancements to the tapes, we're going to talk about those in the future. If you're not quite feeling things the way that you want to, if you're not quite having those experiences, we're going to get into that, ways to enhance the tapes to kind of really bring those experiences to the future, or to the, really have them. You can really have these experiences, but sometimes it may take a little bit of extra work and purpose and focus, right? And we'll talk about how to do that. But this was a great tape. Wave 1 Discovery, Tape 5, Explore Sleep. There was a lot of new things. This is where you're going to really have that first experience. The tapes prior to this, there was a lot of talking. Dr. Monroe was walking you through these visual steps as you're working in your energy conversion box, as you're visualizing yourself in the cave through your resonant tuning, as you're creating your resonant energy balloon, you're visualizing these things. He's walking you through it. He's walking you through each step of Focus 10 as you get deeper and deeper, and each part of your body slowly starts to fall asleep, right? They're very interactive. This one was a little different. This one, now you start to experience and start to feel it. You start to feel your spirit body be created, manifested, materialized, right? And it starts to expand outside of the physical body. A lot of amazing feelings there. And a lot of it has to do also with the physical chemicals that are in our body. Like in the last episode, I talked about how I was deeply relaxed, and when Dr. Monroe came back on and started talking again, he startled me, and a shot of adrenaline went through my body, and my spirit body, I could see it light up, right? It felt amazing. And so one of the things that we want to do is make sure that before we do the tapes, it's, we're not on too much caffeine. That's really going to take away. It's going to make it more difficult to focus. And if you're a man trying to retain yourself, making sure that you're not, wasting yourself all the time, right? Anything that you can do to experience the feel of adrenaline or testosterone or any of those type of things, any way to keep those fluids pumping, right? I know it sounds weird or whatever, but they add to the experience, right? That feeling of when you're falling, when your body falls deeper, it is a chemical response. The same chemical response that would happen is if your physical body actually was falling, right? This adrenaline kind of feeling. So all of this plays into it. And again, you saw it took me 3 separate tries to actually get this one to work. So this was a great tape. This was a lot of fun. Yesterday was a lot of fun. It took a lot of work to get it done, but it was well worth it. And I'm glad that I was able to share all of this with you folks. I appreciate you being here. And as always, remember, harden your hearts and open your minds, because this is Mind War.